Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, and this is a video about fasting. And somebody requested this video, maybe because Lent just started not too long ago. And fasting is it's a really important topic, and it's just something that most people don't consider today. And yeah, it's something that gets adopted a lot by other traditions, and a lot of new agey people push this type of thing. And really, it's extremely biblical. And so let's just get into the video. So first I want to talk about this verse, Matthew chapter 17, verse 21. Maybe one of the most important verses about fasting in the Bible. So just for some context, if you go and you read a few verses beforehand, what's happening is a man is bringing his lunatic son who was sorely vexed, so probably demonically possessed, and it's real. Demonic possession is real. Demons attach themselves to people, to vessels, and so yeah, that's the context of this. So Jesus's disciples tried to heal this lunatic son, and they were unable to. And so the disciples asked Jesus, "How come we weren't able to get rid of these, to heal this man?" And then Jesus answers in this verse by saying, "Howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." And rather infamously, the NIV, so NIV, what do they call it? The New International Version. Really, NIV stands for non-inspired version, because it's been constructed in such a way to, it's just no, you can no longer even call it the Bible. It is so butchered, and blasphemous translations, things that I've talked about before, and many people online have talked about it before. All you have to do is do a Google search of NIV satanic translation, and tons of people have talked about this ad nauseum. And this is one huge example. This verse in the NIV is completely removed. They completely take out this verse that says, "Howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." And so fasting, it's a tool just like prayer, and people don't even think of it like that. And yeah, really, at the end of the day, I can just say that that's what prayer is. Think of it similar to fasting, and something that goes hand in hand with fasting. It's literally something you can do, or kind of in the case of fasting, not do. Choose, make that conscious choice in the moment to say, you know what, I'm fasting right now, I'm not eating anything. And so now I'm being very literal with fasting, as in not eating food. But I think for people, I think especially in modern times, we can twist fasting to be something that accomplishes the same spirit, but in a slightly different way, just because it's a little awkward for some of us, or hard for some of us, to just say, I'm going to just try to not eat for a week. How do you, it's just hard to do that in today's society if you live with a family. And yeah, I don't know how I would really go about doing that. And anyways, maybe I should try, maybe I should figure out a way to make that happen. Um, so I'm gonna read some notes I have written, and then I have a bunch of slides, and that's it. I'm not an expert in this at all. Somebody just asked me to make a video, so this is the best that I can do. And hopefully some of you get something out of it. So the notes I have written down, I just say, fasting is a tool like prayer. By rejecting the flesh, we can amplify the spiritual. So it's a huge meme in the media, and tales of old of some crazy ninja warrior who is blinded or something, and their being blinded amplifies all their other senses. And this is just a true thing. Yeah, if you cut out your sight, your your ability to hear things is going to amplify a little bit. So I kind of think of that as, eating is this very fleshly thing. The body, we have the physical, the body, but then we have the spiritual. So if you kind of turn off your body, your spiritual will be amplified. Um, so continuing on, mindlessly snack. So just making a comparison, fasting. Imagine that you're fasting. One thing that I often do. So I'll just make a point of, normally I only eat one meal a day, but a lot of days what I do is I'll like have little tiny snacks throughout the day. I'll eat like 5 chips or something, and then later I'll have a bite of this, have a bite of that throughout the day, but mostly, for the most part, I only have one meal a day. I think it's really easy to do that these days because time is so short, but I've kind of always been that kind of person. I'm not very hungry in the morning, and so oftentimes I would just eat a really light lunch, a big dinner. That's just how I eat. However, comparing that to what I have been trying, it's taken me a while to make this video because I want to try. I need to fast more. I know it's just something I need to fast more, and not necessarily food fasts, but I think food fasting is very important. And even though I am a once a day kind of eater for the most part, I did notice a difference if I completely eliminated my snacking because, so getting to the point, there's a difference between just mindlessly snacking versus having an impulse and making that choice to take that impulse and to let it go. And something that's important about fasting, I think, another thing that gets lost, people miss this aspect, similar to prayer, where, okay, sure, maybe in some times of desperation, we break down into prayer and we don't have any idea what we're praying about. A lot of times we do know what we're praying about, and I think in the same way, fasting should come about for a reason. You should have a reason to be fasting. I'm fasting because I want to amplify my prayers about this thing. And so getting back to the mindfulness thing, which the whole idea of mindfulness has been corrupted and turned into this new agey / Eastern thought. Being mindful has nothing to do with Eastern thought or anything. Everybody should just understand the concept of being on autopilot versus being mindful of your actions. And so, trying to put everything together, yeah, I do normally eat one meal a day, but if I'm not consciously fasting, I will have these impulses throughout the day. Oh, I'll eat a little handful of chips. Oh, I'll take a bite of that. But when I'm making the choice to fast, I can tell the difference of, oh, I'm actually being more mindful of these little impulses of the flesh and that moment. And yeah, all of this stuff gets corrupted and turned into Eastern thought and stuff like that. It's like a trigger. Having that little moment of, oh, I'm going to decide to not eat chips, eat 5 chips, and it it brings your mind back to the purpose of your fasting. Let's say you're fasting because you want guidance on a certain issue. You have an impulse to snack on a few chips, and instead of being a little robot and mindlessly eating some chips, you say, oh no, I'm fasting right now. And then it brings your mind back to that. Oh, I'm fasting because I'm trying to work myself through this thing. Okay, continuing on. Fasting can be, so just for modern people, how to apply this to your life today. Fasting can be non-food related, I think. Just great stuff. Put your cell phone away for a day, 2 days. Throw your cell phone in the garbage. I don't know. Come up with something like that. And in the same way, you'll have those impulses. Oh, where you'll check your pocket for, why do I feel naked? Why do I feel like something's in my pocket? And instead of just grabbing your cell phone and flipping through something, looking for something that's not there, you have that moment. Oh yeah, I'm abandoning that right now because I'm focusing on this. Okay, and so just a one-off note I have written here. So this kind of goes with breakfast. People go on and on and on about breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Me, personally, I wake up feeling a little nauseous, and I can't even, like, the thought of eating something is the last thing on my mind when I wake up. Personally. A lot of people are starving when they wake up. Okay, that's just not me. But I think it's really interesting, all of this emphasis on breaking your fast, and people will jump up and down about how that's just the most important thing ever. And I think that that's clearly an inversion. They want people to think that breaking your fast is just so important and so healthy, where probably living with that, just being okay with that hunger feeling and going on with it is just helpful for a lot of people. People need to fast more, and people just eat way too much, especially today with time moving more quickly. People eat way too much. People do need to fast more. So I don't agree with breakfast being the most important meal of the day. Side rant, but there's spellcraft in the word of breakfast, meaning to break your fast, and people don't breakfast just becomes this thing and people don't make the connection with fasting. You're breaking your fast. Whatever. So that reminds me of, what about fast food? The word fast is in there. Fast food is the inversion of food fast. So that's just a totally new little connection I made, but it just reminds me of breakfast, how they take something involving the word fast, but they kind of hide it and they make it just such a ubiquitous thing that you forget that it has anything to do with fasting. And same thing with fast food. I think it's kind of a trick and a spellcraft. It's the inversion. It's the complete inversion. Fast food is the inversion of food fast. Okay, continuing on. These days, just giving some ideas for fasting. Okay, put your cell phone away for a day. That would be a great thing for me to do. So another one I have here, workaholics should take a fast from work. And that's just another thing. People think that work is the most important thing in life. I think it's really strange that the word job is the same as Job. And yeah, people take so much pride in their work. I've always hated those propaganda pieces. Do you know those propaganda pieces of Joe the custodian takes so much pride in their work, and they worked for 40 years, always doing the best and whatever. They get like a 5-minute news segment on TV, a little feel-good segment on TV, like after 40 years of being a custodian. Anyways, stuff like that, it just, like, what a waste. That's not what life is about. Life is not about putting pride in your stupid day job. That's not what work is. That's not what work is in the Bible. Works need to be glorifying God. And by just being a school custodian, that you're not glorifying God by making your life about being a custodian. I hate those stories that try to be like, look how pious this person is because they took so much pride in their custodian job. I just hate that so much. Some of the worst programming. But so there's an idea. Take some time off of your work. Just turn it off for a week. And that would be a great fast for some people, to totally disconnect. Turn off your TV for a week. Stop, especially for truthers. Turn off the TV for a week. Stop buying into that stuff. I stopped making videos about current event stuff because you just need to stop. Just unplug. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. So that's a great one for people in the truth community. Fast from your consumption of the media. It doesn't even matter if you know about the coding and if you're breaking the coding. Take a break from it. Fast from it. So I just have some more. I'm just making sure my screen doesn't go black. So I just have some more notes. Fasting, it's like a pause. It's like the absence of something. In music and in speech too, when just one of the most powerful things in speech or in music is silence, the absence. Or you might hear jazz people say things like, it's not about the note, it's about what you're not playing. You know, fasting is kind of like that. It's giving you the negative space to compare. It's the absence of something that brings about something else. I just think of that powerful aspect of fasting. And I already talked about how fasting shouldn't just be done for itself. There should probably be a reason behind your fasting. Oh, I'm choosing to fast because I want my prayers to be stronger about this subject. Fasting can cleanse the body. It can reset your diminished returns. Computers need to be turned off sometimes, or they start acting wonky. Your body probably just needs a reset every once in a while. And some more notes I have. I just want to get through my notes and go through the slides. I've already said a lot, so I'll probably go through the slides fast. I like thinking of like vegetable growing analogies because Jesus gave us a lot of analogies about things growing. So when you're growing, during the vegetative growth, you need fertilizer. You want a lot of food when you're doing vegetative growth. But during fruiting, a lot of things, they produce more fruit when they're stressed. And I think grapes are a big example of this, that They do all sorts of wacky things to grapevines to stress them out during the fruiting process, and it produces more fruit that way. They really don't give a ton of great fertilizer right when it's fruiting. That's not how it works. They actually stress the plant in different ways, and it produces more fruit that way. And I think of fasting kind of like that. There's this phenomenon of learning through pause. I've mentioned very briefly in one video, I took playing an instrument, and you'll notice where you can be practicing your instrument, and you see this small linear growth. But then you might put your instrument down for a few weeks, and have you noticed that you come back to it and everything's smoother? And it's like you took a big jump in knowledge, even though you weren't playing it. It's like sometimes your body and your mind needs a week of pause to really fully absorb what was going on during the learning process. And fasting, it is just like a pause, and I think it just might be helpful in a similar way. It's just really interesting to me that the prayer and fasting, it almost does seem like a positive, negative, not negative as in bad, just that they're like complementing one another in different ways. Prayer is like something that you're very actively seeking out, and then fasting is more of this passive, you're not doing something. I just think that they go hand in hand in a complementary way. So, conclusion, fasting reduces the flesh, amplifies the spiritual, it cleanses the flesh, and it sometimes some stress in the moment, being hungry and all that, dealing with the pangs of the body, sometimes stress brings about more fruit. And so that's what fasting is. Hope you enjoyed the rant. I'm going to flip really quickly through all of these, and then I'm going to go backwards through them. So these are just some verses about fasting. Matthew chapter 6, verse 16 through 18. Not all of the verses, I don't think. Moreover, when ye fast, be not as the hypocrites of a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear unto men to fast. You'll hear phonies talk about fasting all the time. Even some phonies that I've met through the truth community, they would come on and brag about their fast. Well, I'm on month 2 of my grape fast and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't care, because I'm not a health person. I take the position of we eat to survive. I'm not into obsessing. I think that we should eat fresh. We should try to eat real food as much as possible. That's what I think. But people that are just way too into weird health stuff, that's kind of a red flag. And they'll talk about all their strange fasts that they're doing. Keep it to yourself. I don't care about I didn't ask to talk about that. They're just way too readily available to talk about their fasting. I've also noticed this I guess I'll get there in a second. So this is the thing. Muslims will be the first one to come and tell you about their fasting. Did you know? So for all the talking they do about fasting, did you know that during Ramadan, they're having feasts every single night? They might talk to you about how much they're fasting. And I think that the Jewish people do this same sort of thing, where they'll tell you that they're fasting, but really they're just not eating during the day, and they're having these giant feasts at night. It's defeating the whole purpose. And if you're having feasts every night, I just don't understand. So, and you shouldn't be bragging about it anyways. So, and a lot of these people, they get like really excited about this time of year. I mean, look at it. They go out of their way to have these grand feasts. So what are you doing? Are you actually fasting, or are you just not eating during the day so that you can have these crazy huge meals and gorge yourself at night to the point where you probably won't even be hungry during the next day? And guess what? They wake up extra early so they can eat a meal before sunrise, and then they're eating right after sunset. So these people are just huge hypocrites. And I know a lot of Muslims that they love to go on and on about fasting, but they're not going to come tell you, oh yeah, we don't actually fast. We just fast during the day. It's just a day fast. And we have these giant meals every night for dinner. That's not fasting. I mean, it's fasting during the day, but be honest about what you're doing. That's not like a true fast. But they'll come and they'll talk to you about it as if they don't tell you the whole story. They'll say, oh, I'm fasting. but they don't just say, oh, I'm just not going to eat until dinner time, and then I'm going to have this huge meal. Here are just some more verses. If I see anything, like I said, I've already done most of my talk, so if I see anything interesting, I'll point it out. When you fast, make it personal like your prayers. That's just something that's always felt wrong to me. The way that people talk about their prayers in just like the 501c3 churches, in the plastic phony Christian households, when they would do their prayers at dinner time, they just like repeat the same little prayer before their meal. Stuff like that always felt phony to me. Prayers need to just be personal between you and God. I'm not saying there's not times to get together as a family and pray. I think that if you make it more special like that, like we really need to get together and pray about this, then your power is going to be amplified of your prayer. But if every night it's this forced plastic phony prayer, I think that your prayers just totally lose their value. It becomes cheap. And anyways, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. A lot of phonies. I don't know if they're deceiving themselves, or a lot of them are just obvious wolves in sheep's clothing, but they like to try to like one up Jesus. People love to try to do fasts more than 40 days and things like that. If anybody brags to you about fasting, ignore them, block, ignore, and go away. People shouldn't be bragging about this type of stuff. Fasts used to just be part of repenting, and it used to be something that entire groups of people would do together. We're all going to fast and prayer and put on sackcloth and ashes. Some people will fast, but it's not, God doesn't care, because they're not his children. And that's just why I picked this verse. When they fast, I will not hear their cry. And when they offer burnt offering and an oblation, I will not accept them. But I will consume them by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence. There's a lot of people that they think that they're saved. They think that they're doing everything right, but their whole life is a lie. And they do a lot of things, but Jesus knows their heart, and Jesus knows who the phonies are. So just because people fast doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's going to be a lot of people that it's all for naught, because they're not really following Jesus. So it doesn't matter that they fast. This is just an interesting thing I think of every once in a while. The idea of giving somebody a last meal right before their execution is just a strange concept to me. Breaking their fast right before execution is an interesting concept. Somebody asked for sacramental bread right before they were killed. So here was a verse talking about various fasts: the fast of the fourth month, and the fast of the fifth, and the fast of the seventh, and the fast of the 10th. I'm basically done. So this is the last thing I want to show that I didn't get into it. It's something probably worth looking into. I kind of hinted at it with the idea of fast food actually being an inversion of food fasting. Just, there's a lot of spellcraft in the English, what I think is ancient Chaldean language. Fast, fasting, fast, to like go fast, and then holding fast, steadfast. I think there's something to that. The Bible does talk about steadfastness and holding fast, and I think there probably is a connection there that you could make thinking about fasting and how it goes in with this. But I didn't look into that yet, but thought I would just put it at the end here. So hope you enjoyed the video. God bless everyone.